So what is it and who is it that spooked the government to the extent that the Prime Minister ordered the Defence Secretary to bring the DGMO in and ask him to send the troops back? Headlines today has got exclusive information about a secret, unofficial Cabinet Committee on Security meeting that took place. In a moment, I'm going to give you all the information about who was present in that meeting and what decisions were taken and why this raises very serious questions about the denial that the government has put out. But before that, I want to introduce you to the center stage guests for tonight. Joining us from our Chandigarh studios, General VP Malik, former Chief of the Indian Army Staff. With us also at this time, Major General GD Bakshi, one of the leading defense experts in this country. We've got Manu Pabi, he's the assistant editor of Indian Express newspaper. They've been frontlining the story. Their story was denied in the first instance. With me in the studio, Praveen Sawhney, editor of Force magazine. We've also got at this time, representing General VK Singh, Advocate Vishwajit Singh. He's the counsel for General VK Singh and one of India's foremost defense experts, Major General Ashok Mehta. Joining us from Ara in Bihar, a very special guest, former Home Secretary and now a leader of the BJP, RK Singh. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on this program. And with me from Pune, Colonel R.N. Bedi. He's been a part of an armoured corps battalion and has participated in similar exercises that were taking place on the 15th and 16th of January. But let me go across to my colleague Gaurav Sawant, Headlines Today's editor for Strategic Affairs, and let's take our viewers through this new information that we are putting out in the public domain for the first time. This meeting that took place at the Prime Minister's residence at 7 Racecourse Road. If we can have that graphic fired on our screen, please. 9:30 p.m. the meeting began. Tell our viewers what happened, Gaurav.
Now, this was a meeting where the Prime Minister, we are told, was spooked by movement that was taking place. The Chief of the Army Staff had just taken the government to court. It was unprecedented. The government was spooked. The Prime Minister was there. His Principal Secretary, Pulak Chatterjee, he was there. Defence Minister A.K. Antony was a part of this meeting. So was Home Minister P. Chidambaram, then Home Minister P. Chidambaram, the Defence Secretary, the then Defence Secretary, the then Home Secretary, the then RAW and IB chiefs. They were all a part of this meeting where they deliberated on the troop movement. And look at the timing, 16th of January, a day after Army Day. That's the day that the Chief of the Army Staff, unprecedented in Indian history, that he's taken the government to court. And then there's troop movement.
Our sources tell us that this meeting lasted for about an hour and 15 minutes. And in this meeting, this man, Shashikant Sharma, currently the Comptroller and Auditor General, was asked to summon Lieutenant General Ahluwalia, who's the Director General for Military Operations. Let's take our viewers through the next graphic, which explains what happened in this meeting. The Cabinet Committee on Security went on for about 9:30 till about 10:30. Then between 10:45 and 11:30 p.m., Defence Secretary ordered by the CCS to summon the DGMO. The CCS asked the Defence Secretary to bring him in. Tell our viewers what happened after that.
Well, General A.K. Chaudhary was then the DGMO. He was summoned and they did not call the Army Chief. They did not take the Chief in the loop. The DGMO said he called up the Chief and said, I've been summoned by the Defence Secretary. He met the Defence Secretary, where the Defence Secretary told him about this troop movement and said the government, the highest people in the government are spooked. Send these people, send the troops back. The DGMO says he was caught off guard because these are very routine military exercises. Even the DGMO says he wasn't aware of it. They're battalion level exercises. So there was some paratroops and some armored elements had moved. DGMO reached the South Block 11:30. This is the office, the first floor corner room. That is where the DGMO went. He met the Defence Secretary. He was ordered to send the troops back.
No, so what the DGMO told the Defence Secretary was that there were two battalions moving. There was an infantry mechanized battalion moving from Hisar. There were para-commandos coming in from Agra. He knew about the mech infantry battalion coming in because some formation officer from Delhi had called him up and told him that the intelligence agencies are spooked. Therefore, he sent them back on the 15th of January. So this had been building up for more than 24 hours when the government was in deep panic. Go on, Gaurav.
Now, and Army Day parade, Army Chief's house, the at home, all of them were there. None of this conversation took place, even though the government was already spooked. The government knew of whatever build-up was happening. They did not talk to the Army Chief about it that day. When the Army Chief went to court, they feared this was pressure tactics. Did they fear a coup? Did they think a coup would happen? Well, the DGMO was told, send these troops back immediately. He said some elements are already on their way back and the others will be sent back immediately.
What happened raises some very, very big questions, and I want to take them up on our screen right now because this meeting And what we need to know from the government is this. Today we've seen two things. We've seen the NSA come out and say there is no trust deficit between the army and the civilian establishment. We've also seen AK Antony say this was routine movement. Clearly, no. Who triggered the coup alarm at this meeting? What is it that spooked the Prime Minister and spooked everyone at this secret CCS? What specifically did the IB and the RAW chiefs say at this meeting? That is the other very crucial question. Why were there no official minutes kept of this meeting? Usually CCSs are well recorded. There are minutes kept of everything that happens. And what specific instructions were given to the Defense Secretary to communicate to the DGMO, and why was the Army Chief not in the loop?
And perhaps RK Singh is one man who was there in that meeting.
We will take it up one by one. So I first want to go across. Come back, Gaurav. We'll come back to that screen in just a moment. We've got several more things to look at. I want to go across first to General VP Malik, former Chief of the Indian Army Staff. General Malik, the secret CCS meeting, now details being put out into the public domain for the first time. What are you making of the story that Headlines Today is breaking tonight, sir?
Rahul, as we all know that this incident shook the whole of our country, and it also shocked all of us who have served in the army for such a long time, who have also headed this army I have headed it for more than 3 years. It questioned the loyalty and fidelity of the armed forces. That is the basic question. And I'm unhappy that instead of bringing it out in the open, why did this incident take place? Who are the people who were responsible for spooking? We have placed more restrictions instead of taking action against those people who raised this level and took it right up to the Prime Minister's level without first resolving this issue at the lower level, which was quite possible. They raised it to that level of the Prime Minister, and then Prime Minister's office gets into a panic mode. I think it's a very serious question about the civil-military relations that exist, the fragility of the civil-military relations that it exists. And today, instead of taking action against those people, we have placed further restriction on the movement of the army. So I feel that I'm glad that this whole thing has been brought out now, because once for all, I think the whole nation must realize that their armed forces are as loyal, as believe in fidelity to the nation as always. And this particular incident is more of an aberration in the system, which should be corrected properly instead of covering under the carpet.
Okay, Mr. RK Singh, thank you very much for joining us from Ara tonight. You were the then Home Secretary, you're now a member of the Bharatiya Janata Party. What does this reflect about the manner in which the army was being treated, sir, by the civilian establishment of that day under which you served? Because if relations between the army chief and the Prime Minister crash to this extent that he fears that something suspicious is going on, what does that reflect about national security, Mr. Singh?
Rahul, I think what General VP Malik said was correct. The people who are responsible for having spooked the government, the Prime Minister, I think need to be taken to task. They need to be proceeded against. Because I mean, it's totally inconceivable. You see, I have served for 7 years in the Ministry of Defense, and our army is deeply patriotic, intensely loyal, totally committed to democracy. And anybody who puts out a story saying that routine movement of one or two battalions is a precursor to a coup needs to have his or her head examined. And I think that the government getting spooked by such reports was also, I mean, not on. I think anybody with experience would not have got spooked.
But I also want to understand from you, sir. You said that action should be taken against those who spooked the government. Now, what action do you believe, Mr. Singh, needs to be taken against these people?
Basically, I think they should be called upon to explain as to on what basis they put out this, alarmist point of view to the highest levels of the government. Anybody will tell you that you don't have a coup by moving 2 battalions from somewhere else into the Delhi area. The Delhi area has its own forces. It's absolutely nonsense, total nonsense.
Okay, I want to now come to the next part of what we are putting out tonight, which is about why is it that the government was so rattled? Why is it that they were so scared? Because there is some context to it. It's not as if it happened in a vacuum. So if Gaurav, you can join me once again on that big screen, and let's now try and explain to our viewers why is it that people were scared and why the government believes that they had something happening which was out of line. So let's just go back once again and explain that to our viewers. Let's just take that graphic up on our screen right now, one at a time, because I want you to take a very quick, just bring this camera this side please. I want you to take a very quick and close look at this. One mechanized infantry battalion from Hisar and one para commando battalion from Agra was moving towards Delhi on the night of the 15th and 16th of January. Mechanized infantry battalion is an extremely potent fighting outfit with 45 infantry combat vehicles. Now think about this, the highway from Hisar to Delhi, 45 infantry combat vehicles with 6 anti-tank missiles with a range of 4 kilometers that can penetrate 18-inch steel walls. Gaurav.
Now, the government's fear was, why was the Chief of the Army Staff ordering the mechanized forces to move towards Delhi? In case these are mechanized forces going out on an exercise, why weren't they moving towards the desert area, which is their area of operation?
Okay,
this is something that psyched the government.
Armored vehicles also had light machine guns and cannons loaded on them. A mobilization exercise is usually carried out to check war preparedness. But from what I've understood from officers in the Armored Corps, most of these mobilization exercises actually happen in cantonments during a period of 6 to 8 hours. Very rarely do you take them out on the national highway. And as you'll see soon, there was no need, according to several experts, for these infantry vehicles to be moved out of Hisar cantonment. If roadworthiness of the tank transporters had to be checked, this could have been done without arming them to the hilt. January is when there's dense fog. If there is fog, there are trucks on the road at night, and you're bringing out a full cavalcade of 45 infantry combat vehicles. Just try and visualize that in your head. This is very, very irregular. That's what the intelligence agencies were telling the government. And also this point is very important. If the exercise was to be conducted, the army vehicles should have been moved possibly towards Kurukshetra rather than bringing them towards busy Delhi, because that's really a very dangerous thing to do. And this is another conspiracy theory which is being put out. The Hisar Mechanized Battalion was at that time under Lieutenant General Ashok Singh, who is married to General VK Singh's daughter. Is it just coincidence? Is it more, are people seeing more than they should in this? The MOD now needs to clarify on whether there's been any other instance of loaded infantry vehicles moving towards Delhi at night in the last 5 years. In the records, there isn't a single such instance that's been noted. The Ministry of Defence says movement of the army battalion was routine, but there is not a single other recorded movement of this sort in the last several years. While the coup theory may be far-fetched, was the army chief trying to intimidate the government on the day he moved to court? I want to go across to Colonel Bedi in Pune. Colonel Bedi, why is it that you believe that what happened that night was very irregular? Do you believe this intimidation theory, sir?
Sir, according to me, during my entire service in an armored regiment, in 3 armored brigades, 31 armored division and 1 armored division, we never moved the tanks and armored personnel carrier or ICVs like this on the highways. We only moved them in 71 war. I was in Jalandhar, and it was a sight for the villagers to see how the tanks were moving from Jalandhar to Amritsar. But during the normal exercises, it was only short moves we did. And I belong to Hisar. I have done my schooling there. I know the day this armored division was raised. Not a single time the armored personnel carrier or tank transporter with tanks have moved on that highway on which I have moved on Krishna bus service from Hisar to Delhi.
You're saying that this is highly irregular. I want to give everyone an opportunity to come in. General Ashok Mehta, where do you stand? We don't want to be judgmental. Clearly a very divisive issue. New facts now emerging in the public domain on the context in which the general got spooked. What do you make of the details we are putting out tonight?
You see,
anybody has read the book, Edward Luttwak's The Handbook to a Coup d'etat, way back in the 60s, he wrote a compendium on the actions that need to be taken for executing a coup d'etat. And one of the things conclusion he came to, that in India, this is just not possible. So that's the basic point. Now, the circumstantial evidence here points to the fact, which is really the nub of the issue, is that the people who got spooked were completely illiterate politicians and bureaucrats on what constitutes a coup. So I think everybody is agreed that what was happening was not the manifestation of a coup, but your other theory, which really points to the irresponsibility on the point of the then Army Chief of Army Staff, General VK Singh, who has taken his own government to court, who has lost his row about the age extension, and who is conducting these exercises in order, what you use the word intimidation, I would say to influence an outcome. That may not be the case, but I think it is highly irresponsible for a Chief of Army Staff, having taken the government to court, to be carrying out these moves in cahoots with another gentleman.
General VP Malik, what do you make of what Colonel Bedi said? Conclude.
One other thing is that if you put this evidence together, then it becomes quite obvious that somebody because I visited the PMO at that time, the story in the Indian Express came out on the 4th of April.
Yes.
Shortly after that, I went to the PMO and I met one of the highest officials, and he said, yes, we were spooked, but we were spooked because the civil-military relations at that time was abysmal, and that the Prime Minister was trying very hard to get the Defense Minister to act against the then Army Chief.
Okay.
And the Army Chief, in fact, they wanted some kind of a Bhagwat action taken at that time.
Okay, you're giving out several details. We'll build on these threads one by one. General VP Malik, in your professional estimation, tanks moving on a national highway in dense fog. My sense of speaking to several senior army officers is it's highly irregular for 45 loaded tanks to be moving towards Delhi in the middle of the night. What do you think of these details that are now emerging, sir?
I don't quite agree with people who think that they know a lot about such exercises. There is no doubt that we carry out such exercises once in a while for mobilization of our troops from all arms and services, and then marry them up with the Air Force to check how much time will they take to get mobilized for a contingency. Such exercises have been taking place from my time onwards, and these are routine exercises to check how much time is taken for mobilization of a whole combat group, which has to carry out an action, which has to be mobilized and taken out from this area of Hisar, Agra and Hindon. So exercises are routine in nature. I'm not getting myself involved with VK Singh issue. That's a separate issue. Yes, you can discuss it. There are pros and cons of that. And there is no doubt that that seems to have over-influenced the mind of our bureaucrats and the politicians. And
no, but
Ashok
that's
is
a
absolutely
question
right
that Mr. Singh must answer. Mr. Singh, General Mehta says the bureaucrats and netas are illiterate. Now, you have a wealth of experience. The NSA has a wealth of experience. The IB chief, the RAW chief, they're all very, very experienced people. So how can they participate in this meeting and all of them collectively get so badly spooked? What's happening, sir? What's going on?
I really don't know. I worked in the Ministry of Defense for 7 years as director, then briefly as joint secretary, and then as secretary, defense production. And I can tell you, that anybody who thinks that a coup can be carried out in India by moving 2 battalions without the DGMO knowing, without the other army commanders being taken into confidence, needs to have his or her head examined. Simply put, as General Malik said, that exercises are carried out to test the time for mobilization, to test the time for moving them to the nearest airfield, etc., to check as to how much time it takes. So, I have never seen such a lack of understanding or the confidence in each other. In the years I have been in the Ministry of Defense, I have never seen this.
Okay, General J.D. Bakshi, infantry combat vehicles in dense fog moving towards Delhi, 45 of them instead of going towards Kurukshetra, which is what is more logical. What do you make of the circumstances under which the government got spooked, given the fact that this was the morning when the then army chief had taken the government to court? General Bakshi.
Rahul, let me, clarify this whole context. There are 2 infantry brigades located in the city of Delhi itself. There is just 1 infantry brigade in Rawalpindi, which has carried out 3 coups. So all that you need is the wherewithal for staging a coup is already located at Delhi. Please take your mind back to the month of January. That is the time we have the Army Day Parade, we have the Republic Day Parade, and about 10,000 plus additional troops are available and camping in the city of Delhi. Thirdly, there are at any given point of time 2 to 3, sometimes 4 battalions which are either heading for UN missions or coming back from UN missions, and they have their complement of infantry combat vehicles. So if somebody has to do a coup, he has to, number 1, ensure that he is not getting on any telephone lines, on any radio network. To that extent, he would try and use the troops that are in situ in Delhi itself. When you have about 20 to 25,000 troops in Delhi, where is the need to get
Absolutely.
1 battalion from Hisar and 1 battalion from Agra and alert everybody, and people start having nightmares and start having fainting fits? It is amazing.
What I
If
want to
this
do
army
now,
had to do
if
a
Gaurav,
coup,
you can
this-
accompany me back to the screen. Let's try and put into context what everyone is saying about why it is so difficult to pull off a coup in India. In Rawalpindi, there's 1 brigade that pulls off all the coups that have happened in Pakistan's history. Gaurav, explain to our viewers the difference between India and Pakistan and why a coup is almost impossible, and definitely not in the way that the government was thinking.
In India and Pakistan, the 2 countries are poles apart. Why you can't have a coup in India? Well, Pakistan, it's a homogeneous army, by and large Punjabis. The chief is a Punjabi predominantly, and so is the army. So majority from Punjab, you can have a coup. They line up behind the chief. India, heterogeneous army, troops come from across the country. That's one reason. Another reason, the corps commanders report directly to the Pakistan army chief in Pakistan. In India, the corps commanders report to the army commanders. The army commanders then report to the army chief. So for the army chief to have a coup, he'd have to influence a lot more people. The army chief is not first amongst equals. He has unprecedented powers in Pakistan. Not the same in India. The chief of the army staff is just first amongst equals. Army commanders have direct access to the Raksha Mantri should the need arise. So the army chief cannot order the army commanders do this and they'll automatically do that. They question him. General Malik is on our show. He's been the army chief. In Pakistan, the Navy and the Air Force chief are subservient to the chief of the army staff. In India, the Navy and the Air Force chiefs are as powerful as the army chief on several issues. They don't see eye to eye. So clearly, also in Pakistan, the bureaucracy is subservient to the army. That is not the case in India. On the contrary, the bureaucracy is superior to the army.
Has written articles on this. What are you making, sir, of the new details that are being put out into the public domain about the manner in which the government got spooked?
I just want to make 4 quick points.
Sir.
Point number 1. I dare say it's not only the government, the civil servants, the intelligence, but also the army officers themselves who got spooked. For example, I don't want to name the officer on the show, on your show, who's speaking of what the army chief and the army was required to do is explain, like you've done on your graphic, why even if an army chief desires, a coup is not possible in this country. That's point number 1. Now, in addition to the points that you made, let me add one more point here. And the point is that the army chief in Pakistan controls the nuclear weapons and missile. That is his power base. So therefore, even if General VK Singh or anybody else desires a coup, it is not possible. Now, this is sheer ignorance across the board that has scooped all these people, including a lot of army, because army officers who did not explain all this to the public, including the media. My second point is on the chain of command. Second point is that if the defense secretary summons the DGMO, does he not know that the DGMO will first take the permission of the army chief and then go and meet up with the defense secretary? Which shows that there are actually no civil military relations in this country. So all this talk about that at that time they were fragile or they were non-existent, I do not believe. Very briefly, civil military relation means the political leadership directly talking to the military leadership. In our country, it does not happen on a regular basis. It is always through the bureaucrat. So basically, they do not exist at all. Now, my third point is, this is precisely the reason to make them there, the civil military relations. See, this is very important point. Why we need to change our higher defense organization. Quickly, we saw 26/11. We saw where Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, on the third day itself, he met the Chiefs of Staff Committee. We saw when the Chinese came in northern Ladakh in April, May, according to the media reports, it's only on the second week that the Prime Minister met up with the army chief. The requirement is very simple. If in all this gathering that you're showing here on your screen, if there was one military man sitting there, it would have made all the difference.
Absolutely. And there was no military man there at all. And Manu Pabi, as someone who's tracked the story very closely, the question that is now being asked is, who is it that gave the information that led to this informal CCS being put together, which led to the Defense Secretary summoning the DGMO? Do we know who is it who's responsible for spooking the Prime Minister, Anu?
We don't have the full facts of the case yet. As you know, it is a very complicated story, a story that has taken such a long time to come out, and a lot of facets we still don't know. You got out the news of the CCS meeting. It is still not known who exactly gave what information, but the facts that have come out is that not only was the CCS spooked, but also the army itself, the DGMO himself, got a message from his counterparts in the Western Command about such a movement. He himself stopped the troops one day before the Defense Ministry told him to do so. So there was information in the loop. Where it came from, who gave it, I think will take a little more time to uncover.
Mr. RK Singh, what do you think needs to be done? Do you think the government needs to order a probe so that details come out into the public domain, so that standard operating procedures can be put into place, so that there is no fear of a supposed coup, a takeover, intimidation, what have you, all these theories get built up? What do you think needs to be done by this government now, sir?
Rahul, I think, what has happened is most unfortunate for our country and for our institutions, especially the army. This is not something which you sort of tom-tom out in the open, that there was a point where you started suspecting your own armed forces of planning a coup. I mean, you don't sort of tom-tom this out in the open, especially when there's no basis for it. I think the way the Raksha Mantri handled it, questions were asked about this in Parliament, and the Raksha Mantri found out the facts and put the facts on the table, and that should have been the end of it. I think raising this controversy all over again only, the damages our institutions further.
Okay. I have with me the lawyer for General VK Singh, Vishwajit Singh. One of the things that compounded this paranoia was that the officer who was in charge of the battalion which was moving from Hisar, you know, his son is married to General VK Singh's daughter.
The co-commander's
Lieutenant General Ashok Singh's son is married to VK Singh's daughter.
Not at that time.
So they're
Not at that time.
thinking that this is part of a larger conspiracy.
No, they got married only after the general has retired. And in
the allegation is that there was an attempt to change the chain of the promotion chain.
This entire sequence of events, this all cock and bull story, this is a product of a very sick and imaginative mind. Let me tell you. Did this secret meeting actually happen or not? We don't know. And was this set of bureaucracy and political leadership, were they actually spooked? Or were they pretending to be spooked so that they can, pull out a pigeon from the hat and throw it on the general just because he has gone to the court that day, and a movement of troops happened to be happening that particular day? So all this is not known. It's an open secret that there were elements in the government who were lobbying against General VK Singh at that time. They were trying their best.
Let me put that question to both RK Singh and General VP Malik. General Malik, first, the charge being made by the advocate for General VK Singh is that there were elements within the government who were pretending to be spooked because they were looking for a reason to do a Bhagwat on General VK Singh.
Yes.
No, are you trying to say that the CCS meeting was staged and that the defense secretary was told something, and then the defense secretary questioned the DGMO in the middle of the night and he says, "Ye kya ho raha hai?" All these things, are you trying to say that these are all imaginations? They are not imaginations. I think
they might not be imaginations, but someone must have planted these canards into the minds of those people present in the meeting. After all, everybody came up and ridiculed the idea, didn't they? Everybody rejected it. Everybody has came on record and said that it was a routine exercise. How can a routine exercise?
I'm not sure.
How can a routine exercise spook people in that responsible people in the defense establishment?
Rahul, I'm not sure, and I do not want to say anything how much VK Singh was involved. Yes, the problem was there. There is no doubt, which caused the split in the civil, further split in the civil-military relationship. But at the moment, let me also make two other small points. First is that the hierarchy in the armed forces, and particularly in the army, it doesn't accept unlawful command from anybody. And I'm now speaking at the highest level of the army. Second thing, I agree with Parveen Sahni, who said that there is a need for us to correct our high defense control organization, and there is a need for us that when matters related to security are concerned, they should be kept in the loop so that they are answerable, accountable, and they can give the right answers. The whole problem has occurred because of the keeping the armed forces.
Mr. RK Singh, you just heard from the lawyer of VK Singh. He says there are people within the government who are looking for a reason to throw General VK Singh out because at that time he'd gone to court challenging the government. Do you think there could be some merit in that theory, Mr. Singh?
Rahul, I think I come back to the point which you made. I think there should be an inquiry, but that inquiry should be confidential. It should be secret.
Absolutely.
And it should be conducted by an eminent RB officer, an eminent and highly placed RB officer, somebody whose integrity and uprightness is beyond doubt. And he can be somebody neutral from the outside the armed forces can also be associated with him.
Sir, you said that you personally were out of town when this secret CCS meeting took place, but you found out about it from your colleagues. What did these colleagues tell you? Did they confirm that the government was indeed spooked, that there was this informal gathering of people who are usually part of the CCS, that except SM Krishna, they all got together at the Prime Minister's residence rather late at night, and that the Defence Secretary indeed did summon the DGMO?
No, I didn't get into the details. I didn't get into the details about the CCS meeting. But I did come to know about the DGMO being called and asked about the movements. That I came to know about.
Okay, because the government so far has been in complete denial. Let's take a look, and I understand that you held a very sensitive position, therefore I'm not pushing you or challenging you on any of the points that you're making, because you held a very, very sensitive position. You're in a political position now, so we don't want to mix the two and get you to compromise some of what you might have known as being the guardian of India's national security. So I'm very conscious of that and therefore not delving deeper into it. But so far, the government has been in complete denial of whether they were spooked or not. Let's just take that graphic up on our screen right now, because this question has been asked in Parliament, and I'll take you through first what the Defence Minister, Raksha Mantri AK Antony in Rajya Sabha 26 January 2012 said. The movement was purely aimed for training purpose, aimed at refining the mobilization drills and ensuring operational preparedness of the army despite adverse weather conditions. Mobilization forms an important facet of training and is considered a critical performance parameter. These are carried out in a routine manner by various formations and units that do not require any formal notification. Now, Shashikant Sharma, then Defence Secretary, currently CAG, he's replaced Vinod Rai. He said, Defence Secretary Shashikant Sharma told Parliament the troop movements around New Delhi in mid-January, which the government reported to have been spooked by, were in fact a routine deal. So there you go. He's the man who's clearly not being completely true, Manupabi. He says this was a routine deal, the government reportedly got spooked, but there's been denial. You know, they've constantly been denying the story, and that is what makes it that much more intriguing. That is what lights up the element of suspense, Manu.
Correct. They have been in a state of denial from day one, since Indian Express first reported the story. As questions were being cast on the motive of our story instead of going into the facts of the story. And the facts were very clear that these incidents did happen. But I think the government, it being such a sensitive issue, they chose to say lie about some things which they should not have. These are things that were discussed. There were many people in the loop, and now as time is passing, more and more people, I believe, will come out with details and more facts of what actually transpired there.
Concluding comments, General Mehta first.
I think this story produced by the Indian Express nails the lie of the government. If they were not spooked, then why the hell did the Defence Secretary ask for the troops to go
And why
back?
did he lie?
And lie. And secondly, if I can make a comment about the repercussions of this story and past stories and civil military relations, defense reforms, you know, the Naresh Chandra task force had made this recommendation about appointing a permanent chairman, chiefs of staff. This event will certainly make that very difficult.
You said, sir, that there's no question of the government being spooked. Nothing of the sort happened. We've seen several denials from your client. But now clearly you would accept to Manu and to those who believe that this maybe wasn't true, that the story in fact was true.
I don't believe Manu or the newspaper Indian Express, first of all. They have been engaging in this witch hunt against General VK Singh. Right from, it started with this particular story and it has been going on. There was a story regarding toppling of J&K government, and this story has of course has been going on time and again. Every 4, 3, 6 months they come up with some allegedly fresh
No, but this corroborates the story.
Corroborates the story, all right, but why don't that's why there should be an investigation as to who is behind these false insinuations.
Mr. Soni.
No,
the government needs to come clean. They've denied being spooked. Now it's demonstrated beyond doubt that they indeed were spooked.
My point is that whether the government comes clean or it does not come clean is a side matter. The key thing is, for the next government which is coming in, it has to understand a very fundamental thing, that if we are spending a defense budget worth $49 billion every year, and we are looking at a deterrence against China and Pakistan, it will not happen. It will not happen unless our higher defense organizations are corrected. And for that, we need the correct civil-military relations, something which does not exist today.
We've seen so far, General Bakshi, generalities from the government, denials and lies. They said they weren't spooked, now it turns out they were. They said that there's no breakdown of trust between the government and the civilian, between the civilian government and the army. Clearly there was. The government needs to be more upfront. They've been lying all their way through, General Bakshi.
Of course they have been lying their way through, and it is pathetic. Why should you get spooked of shadows which are self-created to get at one individual? You cannot damn the whole organization. The organization has served you so loyally for these 64 years. There have been 2 brigades in Delhi. They never have staged a coup when they could easily have, when 1 brigade is sufficient. There were tanks in Delhi itself at that time. You know, for the Republic Day parade, there were mechanized infantry vehicles. So what are we talking of? You know, it is all allegations by innuendo. This is the worst example of spin doctoring that I have seen by any one paper. To get at one individual, you want to malign, disgrace an institution, demoralize the armed forces, question their loyalty. I mean, how long can this go on?
Manu Papi must
Just
respond.
because you want to get at one individual?
Manu, you must respond to General Bakshi.
I will respond to Mr. Bakshi and Mr. Singh both. It is their choice totally to believe us or believe me or the paper. But they should at least believe their own general. They should believe Lieutenant General Chaudhary, the ex-DGMO, who's an officer who has very high regards, everybody holds for him, when he says that first that the government was spooked, definitely. Secondly, he says, in hindsight, he also says that if he had known that the dates coincided with Mr. VK Singh or General VK Singh going to court, then these movements should not have happened. He has said that also on record. And he also said the government is spooked. And that is all the facts that we brought out. Attacking our paper for anything else is stupid.
Okay, I'm going to leave it over there.
General Chaudhary has also said that this exercise was decided much earlier. The dates of the hearing were fixed later and they were speeded up because the Grenadiers Association had gone to court. How are you establishing a correlation between the two? The cold start doctrine requires the armed forces to be ready at very short notice.
Between the two.
I am saying very clearly that all this is a made-up story. It's a fabricated story.
Okay, you know, psychological operations are an important part of warfare. But psychological operations are usually conducted against your enemy. What you don't want is a government worried about psychological operations supposedly conducted by its own army chief, and we definitely don't want a situation where an army chief is conducting any form of an intimidation or a psychological operation against the government. We've been very balanced, we've been very neutral, we've not taken any sides, we've put the facts out as they stand. You've heard from some of the top experts, you've heard every point of view covered.
Psychological operations were carried out by this bureaucracy who was pretending to be spooked.
Listen, both sides have put up their case. This is the irresponsibility of an individual. You heard and we are not maligning the institution. It is the irresponsibility of an individual.
It might be the irresponsibility and the immaturity of one individual, but it raises questions about the entire system. The government needs to come clean. That's where I end this program tonight. News and updates continue when we come back with India Reports on the other side.